Huddersfield Town were relegated to League One last season from the Championship. They came down with a whimper from the Premier League in 2019, and since then it's been largely stagnation with the Terriers either side of that incredible playoff season under Carlos Corberán. But since Corberán left, things have gone from bad to worse, and now they've got to rebuild in League One. But they've got the man for the job in Michael Duff, a manager I rate very, very highly. He did incredible work at Cheltenham Town. He got them to their first top 7 finish in 7 years. He got them to their first EFL title, ever EFL title, then their highest ever finish. And then at Barnsley, he led an excellent cultural, stylistic reset after they themselves had been relegated in 2022. Big things I'm expecting from Michael Duff. I think Huddersfield have got the best manager in the league, but interesting situation in terms of the squad because they have got lots of players under contract at the moment. So how do they look to rebuild? That's going to be very interesting to find out. And can they offload some of their players? And are they going to get themselves in a position where they're going to be ready to challenge for promotion right back to the Championship? Well, that's all that and more. That's what we're going to be discussing on this Summer Deep Dive. Yes, welcome along to the latest EFL Debate Summer Deep Dive, one of 72 we're doing across the EFL between mid-June and mid-July. Already the full set for League 2 uploaded to YouTube and Spotify, so go check those out once you're done with this one. Get yourself subscribed as well. But for now, delighted to be joined, hopefully, by Matt from the Andy Takes That Chance podcast. You had a dodgy plug there, Matt. Last 11th hour. Crisis.
Oh, good. How are you again?
Yeah, very well. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Matt. I really appreciate your time. Love the stuff at And He Takes That Chance podcast. So thank you for joining me. Talk to me about, I guess, the mix of emotions at Huddersfield, still processing the disappointment of relegation, but also, I imagine, excited about life under Michael Duff.
4 or 5 reasonably poor or mostly poor years now of losing games of football. So we're hopeful that the relegation will lead to a couple more smiles over the season rather than trudging home, defeated. Yeah, I mean, last summer we were taken over by Kevin Nagle, the American owner, who's made himself at home on social media. I'm sure any casual observer will see, and he's good value, to be fair. But he was hamstrung last summer by the FFI protocols, which new owners can find themselves under. And we didn't get off to the best start, and I think that last summer really set us up for a fall last season, especially considering the previous summer we'd had, which was really poor as well. And it was just really a lack of planning and a lack of investment in the team and the squad over a course of 4 or 5 years. Not necessarily Kevin Nagle's fault at all. It was just one of those things that was coming because at Huddersfield we'd done things too cheap for too long and sold too often and not really replaced. So it was coming. Unfortunately, it came under the new owner, so he's had a real sort of baptism of fire. But yeah, I mean, I think since we've been relegated, they've started to make some better choices, and I think Michael Duff is a really good choice, and he's someone to be honest, Gab. I felt that the Swansea, even at that time 12 months ago, I just felt the Swansea move was so yin and yang, you know what I mean? They were so not fit for each other. It was so obvious from the start that they're not fit, but he was a good fit for Huddersfield, I felt, last summer, and hopefully he's still a good fit this summer as well.
Yeah, I think he absolutely will be. I agree. I think stylistically, in hindsight, I mean, I actually did think that the Swansea move would work for Michael because I just did rate his work that highly. But I can sort of maybe see with hindsight that going into a club that sort of idealises super possession-based football, having managed clubs where that hasn't been the case, I think that was a bit of an adjustment for him. So I think that was the wrong fit. But I think that's a massive gain for Huddersfield Town because I look at the work that he does. I think he can build some really good patterns of play. People have said, I think it's easy. He's not super possession based, but I do think that he can coach some good patterns of play as well. But what the big thing that I really like about Michael Duff is culturally he sets it right from the top, and he's a big thing. I think the Barnsley Chronicle might have written about this, where he made a big deal about players saying good morning to the cleaners as well as the owners. So it's like, it's not just about being polite to people because they might help you. It's actually being polite to people out of courtesy. And those sort of just little things, any individual thing, it's not like going to be life changing, but just those sorts of things just add up and give you a bit more of a core to work with. So, no, massive fan of Michael Duff and really excited to see what he can do.
Yeah, me too. I was lucky enough to go down to the training ground, just before the Birmingham game, before we played Birmingham towards the end of last season. And I can tell it's a good fit from what you've just said as well, and what the Barnsley Chronicle said. When I went down to the training ground, everybody was super polite and friendly, and everyone goes out of the way to say hello to each other. So I think he's coming into a club that fits him quite well, I think, in an area that he knows particularly well. I mean, Huddersfield and Barnsley share a border, it's not it's the opposite ends of the world. And as a lot of our fans will say up here in terms of style of football, get it forward. And that's, a big thing that you'll hear from the stands at Huddersfield. And Michael Duff does, he doesn't, it's not hoofball, but they play the ball to the front men early. And that's what Huddersfield fans like. And obviously not what they like down in Swansea, like I say, who like their possession-based football after. And everyone likes the football that they had success with, didn't they? And Swansea had an amazing success in the Premier League with, under Laudrup and Brendan Rodgers, etc. I think he was a bit before, but under similar sort of manager. So you can understand that at Huddersfield we tend to do quite well with an up and at 'em kind of style, and I think Michael Duff is a type of manager who's happy to deliver that, and he's going to get backing from our board and owner. So yeah, it could be an exciting time. It all seems to kind of fit. Which is quite worrying at Huddersfield, Gav, because nothing ever seems to go right. So so it's worryingly logical at the minute.
Absolutely. From one thing that's logical to another thing that's less logical, Kevin Nagle, your owner, why? I don't know why. I can't explain this, but he reminds me of Will Ferrell somehow. Am I completely? I don't know why.
Eyes, is that what it is?
Yeah, maybe it's the eyes. Yeah. It reminds. Anyway, that's kind of. But yeah. What do you think? Where are you with Huddersfield Town from an ownership and structural point of view at the moment?
I think we're quite fortunate in many ways. I know a lot of people say, yeah, you've had a new owner 1 year and he's got you relegated, and that's fair. There were sort of, you can add mitigating factors to how that's occurred, and obviously there are lessons learned along the way. But I think it could have been a lot worse from an ownership point of view over the last sort of, since I've been watching Huddersfield. We've either had thrifty owners, shall we say, or owners who've put money in and then expected it back and then some. So we've never had anyone who's just not really philanthropic. I can't even say the word. We've not had anybody sort of like that. Dean Hoyle to a point, but then when it came to the end, he kind of gave us the bill for it, which he never made back anyway. But so at the minute, he's putting a lot of money into the club. His communication is brilliant and poor at the same time. He's really funny because he does all these video diaries to keep the fans updated. Kind of, it's very and his mate Dave, who's great as well. He's kind of like Kevin Nagle's advisor. He's not really a club employee as such, but he advises Kevin Nagle, and he kind of tests the waters, and he's good at understanding the temperature of football fans, etc. So he goes and tests this out and feeds it back to Kevin Nagle, and then Kevin can sort of jump in and sort of say, well, we can do a video diary and explain what's going on to the fans at this point. And he's very, not just on social media, but he's inviting supporters to the stadium to have tea and cream cakes with him and all sorts of stuff.
Right.
He's genuinely, like I say, we could have got somebody who would have been quite clinical and just kind of, here's 30 million quid, Huddersfield, that's 10% interest, over the next so many years. There's a lot of owners who, especially from America, who do that. But we've got a guy who's genuinely a decent guy who wants to do well for the community and the area, and that's quite unique, I think, in some American owners. And I think we've landed on someone who is very quirky to us because he's different from America, but someone who's a genuinely good person who wants to do better for the football club. And And one of the things that was music to, a couple of our ears was that when he was asked, when do you expect to get this money back you're putting in? He seemed very confused by the idea of taking money back out, and that's something that we're not used to. So for somebody to come in, spend their own money, and not expect it back on a football club which is thousands of miles away from his home, and to be honest, it's a very strange fit, Sacramento to Huddersfield. It's the sunshine and everything of Sacramento and positivity to Huddersfield, which is probably famed. The people there are probably famed from being a bit more self-deprecating and dour and whatnot. And I think football has taught us to be a little bit negative at times. But so he's kind of like completely opposite, and I think we kind of need that a little bit because his positivity can rub off on others a little bit sometimes. And I like him for his quirks and all. I think he's a good human being. I think he's here for the right reasons. He's not a Huddersfield fan. He is now, but he wasn't. When he came, I think it was just a case of this. He wanted essentially to get Sacramento Republic into the MLS, but that would cost something like 450 million over there, which is insane, to get them from their second tier to the MLS, including a new stadium. So I think he's looked overseas and gone, okay, what's available? And Huddersfield was presented to him, and I think he came and saw and liked what he, everything that was around it. And he saw the potential there. There is potential at Huddersfield. I know some people might sneer at that, but there is potential. We've seen bits of it before with under David Wagner, etc. And I think he perhaps thought, you know what, if I can get these guys to the Premier League, maybe that's something for his legacy. That's, I think, when a lot of people get to sort of late 60s, 70s, they sort of think, right, what have I left behind, kind of thing. What have I done? And so there would be that, and he would also be able to flip Huddersfield Town and sell them for more money, which is how he would make something back on it. So I think the way he's gone about things is good, and he's investing in the community, he's investing in the stadium, and everything's positive so far in terms of that. We've the only sort of bad thing is it's been disjointed on the pitch, but we're starting to get that together now, and we're starting to look like a normal football club for once.
Wow. Well, we'll see. I think that's really exciting. And by the way, I'm getting a little bit of hiss back. So what I'm going to do is mute each of our mics between when either of us are speaking, so I don't hear unless there's a way you can sort of fiddle with the settings. But I'll presume it's just a case of muting the mics. So in terms of the squad then, would you be happy with Lee Nichols being your number one goalkeeper next season? Because I think there's no question he'd be one of the best shot stoppers in League One. Some question marks over him previously in terms of distribution.
Yeah, I'd be delighted with Lee Nichols. The sort of feeling around the supporters at the minute is that he's probably going to leave, or he's angling maybe to leave. And I think what is he, 31-ish now? So I mean, there's no guarantees Huddersfield will get straight back to the Championship. So I think at his age, if he's thinking that maybe a move now would be my last chance to try and push on towards the Premier League, I think everyone would say, do you know what, fair enough. If he went to be second choice at mid-table Championship club, I think there'd be a lot of perplexed looks. But if we kept him, amazing. If he went to better himself in a higher level, shake hands, fair play, good luck, Lee.
That makes a lot of sense. How are you feeling about the goalkeeping situation generally? And if Lee Nichols left, would you be happy with Chris Maxwell as the option? You've also got Jacob Chapman coming in as well. Or do you feel like you'd need another goalkeeper coming in?
It's difficult to say. Chris Maxwell did okay last season. He's okay, but I just don't think that he, from what I saw last year, and maybe it's because it's difficult when a goalkeeper's in and out of a team to sort of get that consistency going. But I would probably want someone else. I don't think Chris Maxwell would fill me with. He's, like I say, he's okay, but I wouldn't be 100% sure going into the season with Chris Maxwell. As a number two at this level in the Championship, that's great. But as a number one, I'm not entirely sure. And Jacob Chapman's decent, but again, he's only played 1 or 2 games, and you can't sort of say we're going for promotion and then throw in untested kids. You have to sort of look after your spine, really. So I think I would expect someone to come in.
That makes a lot of sense. So in terms of centre backs, you've got well. First of all, I'm expecting Michael Duff to play 3-5-2, so we'll have to wait and see. But I'm almost certain that that's what he would go with based on what he's done throughout his managerial career so far. But you've got quite a lot of centre backs because you've got the experienced heads, Mikael Helek, who I think has been one of the most important players in the Championship, Matty Pearson as well, similar category, Tom Lees. And then you've got Brody Spencer, who could possibly fill in a back three, Josh Ruffles possibly as well. And then you get to maybe some of the more unproven lads like Rodinho Bulka and Loic Aina. So, yeah, a lot to unpack there.
Yeah, I mean, we've played one preseason game so far at Emily, and we played a variety of shapes. Where we won 5-0 at Emily, which Emily I think are step 7 in the pyramid, and it's just a local club that we have a good relationship with and have a sort of friendly every year. And it was a case of mixing 3 different teams over 90 minutes, so each 11 played 30 minutes, and for 2 of the thirds, if you like, he played 3-5-2, and then for 1 he actually played a back 4. So there are different kind of options, and there are players in there who do and don't suit that back 3. I think Brody Spencer would be someone who's come through brilliantly last year, and when you sort of want to build a team to get promoted and build a team with resale as well, you kind of want Brody Spencer in his best position, playing carefree and as consistently in one place as possible. And last year he played left centre back, right centre back in a 3, played centre back in a 4, played right back, left back, right wing back, left wing back, and that's a lot for a 19-year-old. And it's a credit to him that he did so well. His debut or seasonal debut last year was marking Jack Grealish in the FA Cup, and he did an amazing job on him. But a back 3, I don't think particularly gets the best out of him. We've brought in Sorensen from Lincoln, who looks a good signing for the wing back. So I'm not sure whether Brody would be a wing back. So it's difficult. I think we're about to potentially announce another wing back tomorrow on the left. So I think a back 4 at right back and Brody Spencer would really excel. Centre back with, and again, this is it. We don't really know who's going to be there at the start of the season because Mikael Helek, the feeling again is that he's probably going to leave. He's too good for League One. He wants to get back in the Polish national squad. He's not going to do that playing for League One Huddersfield. It's just not going to happen. So realistically, a player with the numbers and the figures that he's got over the last 2 years in the Championship, I mean, in terms of clearances, interceptions, he's at right at the very top, of that, and he's been excellent. But you can't hold players back either, so if someone came in for him to and better himself, he would go as well. But he goes, and you can put in maybe Tom Lees or Matty Pearson in the middle of that 3, who's experienced. I think Matty Pearson had a bit of a dip last year in terms of his physicality, but it's Matty Pearson. He'll head what other people won't, and you need that in League One at times. And again, it depends what kind of back 3 Michael Duff wants. Does he want to have that flexible one where the centre backs overlap like Chris Wilder used to do at Sheffield United? Does he want them just to be solid in a 3? And there are different options. I mean, Brody Spencer could overlap from the right or left or underlap. He could do either. But if you play a back 3 of Spencer, Balker, and either Helek, then there's a weakness in the air there because Spencer and Balker aren't particularly great in the air. So there are holes, but there are also a lot of positives. Rodinho Balker we bought from the Dutch second tier last year, and it was quite well thought of for, I think it was just under $1.5 million. So we expected big things from him, and he's a very quick defender who likes to pass out from the back. So I think he would be very suited to that. Whether he plays right side, left side, it doesn't really matter. But he needs someone commanding with him because in the air he's not. That's probably his weakest part. So it's about getting that blend right, and it's about what Michael Duff wants to do. And I mean, we're probably going to have to change things throughout the season as well, because I imagine that we're probably going to go into the season as one of the favourites for the top 6. Whether that's right or wrong, it doesn't matter. But and that will probably encourage teams to play a mix of a low block against us or a high press. It just depends, and that sort of low block then will probably need us to have centre backs who can then bring the ball out from the back and into midfield, and that's where Rodinho Balker really excels. So it's going to be interesting. Tom Lees is a player I really like. I think he's been a great signing for us on a free over the last few years. He's a really good really good player in terms of his warrior tendencies. He's just really solid. He doesn't look commanding, but he doesn't lose a lot. He's not quick, but he doesn't get beat a lot. It's just a really sort of solid defender, and he's still doing well. It's sort of like 30. I think he's still at 32 now, but so we've got a lot of good options there, and that was never a weakness in the Championship at the back. It's just really about getting the blend right, and I think Josh Ruffles as well, coming back from injury, is probably going to be looked at as more of a left-sided centre back now than a wing back. He's not quite as quick as he was, but he's filled out more, so he's a bigger unit. And again, 6'1", Josh Ruffles, he would probably be an option for that left-sided centre back role. So we've got a lot of options there, and maybe we do need to cut some players from that as well, because the different rules in terms of your profit and loss, etc., and the amount of percentage you can spend on wages, etc. So so that we probably will have to cut some players at some point, and we do have a lot of defenders, and there's a lot of players to go through, Gab. Loic Aina has got some form of potential in there as well, and as it stands, the best back three would be Hellick, Balker, and Spencer. But you can't rule out someone like Matty Pearson or Tom Lees from that either, and you will need them when your back's against the wall. You go away to Birmingham City, and Birmingham City have theoretically spent a lot of money on a forward line. You want a Matty Pearson who's going to put his teeth on the line, literally, and Tom Lees, throwing himself in, etc. You need these players, so we're going to need a variety of players if we can afford them. And I think we've got a decent enough blend. I think maybe we just lack potentially a first choice left-sided centre back who can bring the ball out from that side with a bit of height. But other than that, I think at the back is fairly decent.
Looks that way, doesn't it? I agree with you. I think that if you were to play Pearson, Hellick, Lees, I think the problem you'd have would be, especially against, like you say, those low blocks, is that Pearson, well, certainly Lees, I think would probably struggle in those 1v1 duels. I think in those wide areas that could be a bit of a problem possibly. So I would think maybe have one of them in the central areas, Hellick if he stays, or Pearson or Lees if Hellick goes. But then that's where you need someone like Bolker to step up and have a big season. But yeah, I think those wide centre backs are going to be really important. Likewise, the wing backs, and like you mentioned earlier, Matt, you've brought in Lasse Sorensen from Lincoln City. I'm super excited about this signing, and I imagine the Terriers are too.
I think the only person that's unhappy at Huddersfield about Lasse Sorensen is Jonathan Hogg, because he's come in and he's beaten Jonathan Hogg's strength record in the first day of pre-season training, and I don't think that'll have gone down well with Hoggy. But he looks like a great character. I spoke to Gaz Hutchinson, the Lincoln fan, about him as well, and he was full of praise for him. And the last time we signed a fullback who could play wing back, if you like, from Lincoln, it was Harry Toffolo, and that went really well. So hopefully there's more of the same. But Sorensen looks good. I think personality wise, he fits the profile of what a Michael Duff type of player is, or type of person he is. I think he's got a lot of qualities. So yeah, I'm excited to see him get going, and fitness wise as well. He looks like he can, go box to box all day. It's a good signing. I mean, in terms of backup, we've got Sorba Thomas still at the club, and I would expect Sorba Thomas to go come the end of the transfer window. He's available. He wants to go. Is what we're led to believe. But he came on against Emily. We played one of the 30 minutes against Emily, and he was very good yesterday. And he didn't down tools. He worked very hard. So we may be in a very fortunate position where things don't happen, and when we have Sorba Thomas. But if we do, then I'm not sure where he plays, because he's better as a winger, if you like. And if we're playing 3-5-2, I'm not sure where he fits in. And if he does fit in anywhere, it would be right wing back, and it'd certainly be interesting. But I expect he'd be gone. In terms of who else can play right wing back, again, Brody Spencer can step out and play there. We've got Ollie Turton. I didn't even mention Ollie Turton before as well. He's one of the ones who's better as a defensive right back, but he can sort of play as a covering centre back in a three. A wing back, not so much. But Ollie Turton's there, another good professional footballer that we've got. We've got a lot of good pros in that back line. But we've got a lot of options. If you want to go to the left side, I can go into the left side as well. We've got Jaheim Headley, who's he's heading to sort of towards his mid-20s, but he's still raw. He still plays like he's 19, 20, if you know what I mean. There's certain things that he does he should have really ironed out by now. He can he's quick. He's very strong. but he can be very erratic in terms of his marking, in terms of play, people getting behind him, in terms of his end product as well. And Ben Jackson as well. Ben Jackson is like the opposite of if you molded Headley and Jackson into one fullback, you would have into one player, you would have a great left wing back. Honestly, Ben Jackson's got sort of the delivery, but he doesn't have the strength and the speed really of Jaheim Headley. But mix them together and it'll be fine. And I mean, Josh Ruffles can go there. We've been linked with Mikael Miller from Plymouth. I presume that'll be for that role as well. A player similar, sounds very similar to Jaheim Headley. So I mean, with Sorensen and Headley or Miller or someone like that down the left, that can go up and down quite a lot. And I think supporting, especially with a front two, you need to be able to support from wide. And they certainly seem like two players who can support from wide and then drop back into the five when you're in a defensive shape. So it's interesting, but I would imagine Headley, Jackson, or Miller, whoever it's going to be, Ruffles, they would all need a solid left-sided centre back behind them, and that's probably one area to go back to the defence. That's probably still the one area whereby you sort of look at it and go, maybe that's a weak spot. Maybe Brody Spencer can step up again, but or Josh Ruffles, but that at the minute that's sort of one area where you kind of flag and you think I'm not sure about that. It could be good, but I'm not 100% sure what will happen. But but in terms of the right side, that should be fine. Balker, I think, would play behind Sorensen as a right-sided centre back, and that would be very strong. But yeah, I think in terms of wing back, we're not too bad really.
Not too bad. I'll tell you what, I think Jaheim Hadley's going to be one of the best wing backs in League One this season, and because I do understand where you're coming from in terms of he hasn't sort of ironed out certain areas of his game. But what I'm mindful of is he had an amazing, what was it, half a season at Harrogate, out on loan. And then it was like he got kind of fast tracked straight to the Championship. And maybe in hindsight, what he probably needed was a kind of middling season in League One. So actually, he's going to get that season in League One, having had a bit of experience in the Championship. And let me add the other thing. I think in the Championship, especially in a dogfight, Headley's not going to have as many opportunities to break into those dangerous areas. So when he doesn't get the execution right, it gets noticed. Whereas I think in League One, when Huddersfield are one of the better teams, I think Headley's going to get into those areas time and time and time again. And so if he gives you 4 bad balls, but puts one on the money, the one on the money is the one that gets remembered, as opposed to in the Championship where he might only put one ball across, and the bad ball across is the one that gets remembered. So that's kind of my theory on Headley from the outside. I think he's going to be one of the best wing backs in League One, and I think he's going to improve under Duff as well.
I hope so. We're coming on to sort of the not to take the hosting job from me, but the reason really why Jaheim Headley struggles, and a lot of people struggle wide with us, is our midfield has been atrocious for years. It's been, in terms of being able to pass a football, honestly, Gab, it riles me, and it's going to start triggering me again. But I've never seen a team over the last 2 years fail so much at simple 5-yard, simple. I wasn't going to swear, I was just tripping over, but simple 5-yard passes to feet under no pressure. I have never seen a football team, apart from England in these eras, maybe sometimes, but I've never seen a team be incapable of making a simple 5-6 yard pass, as what Huddersfield Town have been like over, even under Carlos Corberán when we finished third. Our Achilles heel was being unable to make short passes, and it infuriates me, especially when there's no pressure to make a simple pass. But hopefully this summer we're going to have a rebuild in that area. It's a long, long time overdue. We've not had a passing midfielder since Carol Eiting, a decent passing midfielder since we had him, and even he was injured for most of the time. So you would even have to go back to Aaron Moy, the last time Huddersfield had a central midfielder who could pass a ball consistently in there, and then he left in 2019. So I've been a frustrated figure in the stands since 2019, especially when you get treated to Aaron Moy for 3 years, and then all of a sudden you're watching other players, I won't name them, but other players, constantly miss-hit 5-6 yard passes. It's infuriating, honestly. But that's an area which should hopefully get rebuilt over this summer.
Matt, can I'm going to throw a name at you, Josh Osterfield, because I know that It probably seems a bit unlikely right now because it's not as if he's absolutely ripped it up in his loan spells elsewhere. But I've looked at Osterfield, one or two games he's had out on loan, and I actually think he plays some quite nice touches. And I think, from memory, I don't think he's ever played in one of the better teams in his times out on loan. He's played on loan at Harrogate, who I think are sort of, well, they are normally mid-table in League Two. He played on loan at Morecambe, who are sort of bottom of the league. I don't think he's ever played at a side that's really challenging for promotion. So I'm actually wondering, for Huddersfield, who are going to be a bit more on the front foot, I think he might be able to call the shots a bit more because he is a very tidy footballer from what I've seen. So if he has a good pre-season and impresses Michael Duff, then he would be my sort of wild card to, maybe has half a chance. No?
You probably want more of an answer. No, not for me. I don't think he's brave enough. He's coming up to 24.
Probably.
No, he doesn't do it for me. And I don't like to say that because he's come through the Huddersfield Academy. You want your own kids to do well, but no, he's not for this team. No. He's just, for me, he's just too slow to the ball. He's too slow in the play. He's tall. He's got some good physical attributes. But no, he's in terms of passing routines and stuff, he's just too slow into it, and he's not brave enough on the ball either. I mean, he could go out and have another couple of loan spells and then come back, but at this moment in time, I would say no.
Okay.
But I mean, there's I can't even remember the Bristol Street Motors Trophy, isn't this year? Maybe he would benefit from games in there and see how he does. But at this moment, I don't think Josh Osterfield will be around the first team, but he may get a chance in some of the cups, and who knows if they do well. There's a younger midfielder at Huddersfield called Tom Yapenda who is already better than Osterfield. So Josh is kind of behind him, and then there's another one called Michael Stone who's coming through as well. And I think when you get to 23, 24 and you've not made that jump into the first team and looked wildly uncomfortable when you have made the leap in, and you've got younger, hungry players coming through who have done better already. I just don't see it. And Withers trying to reinvigorate that area, I think he might find himself pushed out, if anything, to be honest.
Okay.
Same with Scott High. Scott High, in theory, could has some good attributes, but it just doesn't happen for Scott High either. I mean, that's mostly physical. But I would imagine him and Josh Osterfield may either get pushed out permanently or on loan this year.
That makes sense. Talk to me about Openda then. Have you? Because I don't think he's played for the first team yet, but you've been able to get a steer on supposed to be quite highly rated Academy Player of the Year in 22-23, I think.
Yeah, he's come on a couple of times. He came on against Man City for his debut, and he looked all right even against Man City. Yeah, I mean, some of those players looked absolutely horrendous against them, as you would expect. But he came in and looked fine. He's grown again over the summer. He played against Emily the other day, and when he played, he just bosses the midfield. He's 6'3". There are sort of shades of, and it's a lazy comparison maybe, but there are sort of some shades of Philip Billing in there in terms of him being a really tall, elegant, left-footed central midfielder. But he's just very easy on the eye in terms of his passing and physically for someone who's 19. I think he's 19. He's very good as well. He's got skill. And I'm not saying he's going to be the next Jude Bellingham or anything, but he's got a lot of potential. And I think given game time this year, he's going to be the midfielder that would break out from Huddersfield and maybe force his way into the first team. And he can sit, pick a pass, he can break forward. He's got a lot to him. Obviously, with the mid-19, you have to sort of be a little bit cautious and dip them in and out, and you will understand that there are peaks and troughs along the way. But I think his ceiling is potentially, in terms of potential, is a lot higher than Josh Osterfield, Scott High, and some of the others. And I think he's the one that we're going to look at, and potentially he could be a real breakout star in the league and someone that Huddersfield could make a lot of money on. Alternatively, it could go completely wrong and he ends up playing for Waltham and Hersham or someone. And no disrespect to them, that was the first non-league team that came to mind. But it could end up there. That happens to a lot of academy players from Huddersfield. But the signs are really good at the minute, really, really good. And that's really why things like that are really. Josh Osterfield probably won't be able to force his way in. But we've still got Jonathan Hogg as well. I mean, love him or hate him. Huddersfield fans. He's still there, and he's still and to be honest, if you're Tom Yapenda coming through into the first team of Huddersfield, who would you want to sort of be able to lean on more than anything as a Huddersfield player than Jonathan Hogg, who's very doesn't take any nonsense, very aggressive, but he will help people. I've heard this quite often. He's a good sounding board at the football club. He's a good captain, and you're a young midfielder. Jonathan Hogg will be on you day and night. Honestly, he will not let you sleep. He'll be in your head when you're trying to get to sleep, telling you that you've got to make that pass, make it better, do this, do that. But it's for the benefit of them, not the detriment. And we've still got Hoggy in there to really guide some of these through. And Ben Wiles is someone as well who we're looking forward to this year. He came for just under $1 million, I think, last summer. It was sort of the main signing we made last summer, and he just wasn't fit at any point, bothered by ankle injuries, and he just couldn't get into any games in the Championship. And we're hoping sort of the step back now will allow, and this pre-season and a fit Ben Wiles, we're hoping will make a difference into that midfield as well. And if he does, then I don't think people will be too to fresher pastures, if you like. And but this is the chance Ben Wiles has got now to really push on with us. Because if he doesn't, he may find himself being surplus. But I'm quite excited to see what Ben Wiles can do at 100%.
Yeah, well, I think 100% in terms of fitness, and also 100% in terms of motivation as well, because it's felt to me for quite a few years with do you know what? I remember watching Rotherham lost 3-1 at my team Birmingham a few years. This was 18-19 season, and Ben Wiles came off the bench and he just lit up the game, and you could see every time he got the ball, he wanted to go forward, and you looked at him and you thought, wow, this could be a really special talent, and had a couple of great seasons off the back of that for Rotherham. But then he was linked with Burnley and didn't get the move, and since then I think his attitude at Rotherham was maybe some questioned, and it seems like he's not really been able to lift himself for Huddersfield. So for me, I think he needs a strong manager like Michael Duff to sort of get into him and say, look, you've still got a lot of potential in the game, but you need to get your act together right now. And look, I don't know Ben Wiles, but that seems to be a little bit where he's at. But I know he's got a lot of ability, and hopefully that can show in League One.
You have to factor in a bad ankle injury he had as well at Rotherham just around that same time. He had a really bad ankle injury, which has affected him long term, and it's just about he's still not fit from that ankle injury at Rotherham. So if the football club can get him fit, then there's a really good player. Like I think you're right as well. I think Michael Duff is the right kind of manager as well. And if you look at the teams at Barnsley, you get a lot of goals come from that midfield at Barnsley under Michael Duff. You're looking at your Connells, Phillips, Callum Styles, all the players that they've had there have all contributed and chipped in and been really important cogs. Herbie Kane, etc. And I think Ben Wiles can be one of those who can potentially chip in with 8, 9, 10 goals if he's fit, and then a number of assists as well. And I think if he does, he'll be a key component of that. But I still think we're still looking for someone who can sit in there and pass the ball fluidly in that midfield. And I think that is really key to that area, in that Huddersfield go out and they get a playmaking central midfield. I mean, David Kasumi was in there, and he did well in League One last time at MK. His defensive stats were off the scale, weren't they, at MK Dons? In terms of his interceptions, his picking up second balls, etc., were phenomenal. But he's not really done it consistently for Huddersfield either, and he's not really had injuries to blame for that so much either, like he did at MK Dons. It's just not really happened, and I just don't think anyone's really found the niche for him yet in the team. But I'm not sure. I'm not really sure if he's a Michael Duff kind of player or not. We'll have to wait and see on that, because he's better off the ball than he is on it, and you do need those type of players. But I'm not sure how he fits in quite yet this season. But I'm sure pre-season will tell us more.
Yeah, he's as well as being a very good ball winner at MK Dons, he did also offer some quite good ball carrying. And he went on some lung busting runs to sort of set things up. So he has got that side to him, but maybe you've not seen quite as much as you'd have maybe wanted. So Yeah, so I mean, again, it feels like we're having a lot of conversations about players where there's sort of uncertainty, where they've got some potential, but you don't quite know how whether they're going to be hit those standards and whether it's all going to come together. And that feels like a familiar theme. I mean, if you look at the mass of quality, it's very very high in terms of the depth that you've got, but it's
Mm.
difficult to kind of pin down the best 11, isn't it?
It's the cohesion, yeah, but that's the problem. That's been the problem with Huddersfield. You can point to them and say it's like we've already sort of said the left side of defence doesn't quite balance correctly. The left side central defence probably doesn't balance at the minute, but it might. That's the thing. In the midfield, we mentioned David Kasuma, Ben Wiles, Hogg, Yapenda, and to be fair, that could potentially be a really good three in there. You could make a good three out of that, but again, there's no one who passes the ball in there. So you highlight an issue there where no one really passes the ball. No one really has scored goals for Huddersfield from midfield out of those guys. So you've got that sort of issue as well. The midfield has been a real can pass a ball, he can score goals, but he needs to be fit. Kasumu, we've just not seen. I don't think we've seen the best of him yet at Huddersfield, and I think this will be his last 12 months. And in terms of his contract, and call me suspicious or whatever, but players usually do quite well in the last 12 months of a contract. So maybe we'll see something from David Kasumu on that one. But for me, at the minute, the blend's not quite right in there just yet, and
Yeah.
that's why we've been with the guy at Bristol Rovers, Anthony Evans.
Mm. Um, yeah, well, hopefully you can make that sort of addition, someone who can add a bit of creativity to that midfield. So, I mean, I'm looking at the attacking options. You've got Josh Koroma there, who can play as one of the central, although he'd probably rather play wide in a three, but he could play in a front two. You got Danny Ward there, who was instrumental in the Championship player final run. Kian Harrott still there. You've got Reece Healy. You've got Bojan Radulovic, who had a good goal scoring record, I think, in Europe. Carl Hudlin and Tyree Simpson. So that's seven potential striker options you've got there. That's quite a few, isn't it?
Yeah, I think I'm only kind of happy with one of them at the minute, and that'd be Reece Healy. I think Reece Healy could have a really good year for us. When he played at the end of last season, he was decent for us. He looks like he's lost a bit of sharpness. But what a lot of good players take you back to Alan Shearer when he lost his sharpness, he became a target man. He became, he was one of the best off shoulder strikers in Europe, and then when he had those knee injuries, he then became one of the best target men in Europe. He reinvented himself, and Reece Healy, end of last season, didn't quite have the sharpness, but he was dropping from off the shoulder into the 10 role and linking things really well and arriving late in the box. So he's kind of already redeveloped old, and that excites me. That he's an intelligent striker, and we haven't had many of them for a while. So, well, Jordan Rhodes was intelligent, but in a different sort of way. So I'm quite excited to see what he brings. Bojan Radulovic came with a bit of a reputation, but he's not particularly done anything yet. He's got a great goal at Stoke, but he just seems very lightweight for the English game. And for a target man, he gets bumped incredibly easy. He needs a big preseason. He needs a lot of strengthening. If he does, he could be phenomenal. But he's not quick either, so he doesn't particularly run the channels. And if you've got a target man who can't take knocks to the back, he's not much of a target man. He becomes a scarecrow essentially. And then Tyree Simpson, I mean, he's massive. You don't want to mess with Tyree Simpson. He was on loan at Northampton, but I think he only got like 3 goals.
Didn't do so well. The reviews at Northampton weren't hugely positive. So
he's not. I think he's kind of late to football really after playing rugby quite a lot, and he does look a bit like a rugby player. He's an absolute monster. He honestly wouldn't tangle with him. But he needs more development. Kyle Hudlin, to be fair to Tyree Simpson, he's 22, so he's got a lot of time still. Kyle Hudlin, on the other hand, 24, come from non-league, never been in an academy as such. There is something there, but whether Huddersfield Town have time to find it, that's the other thing. I think what they'll probably do is kick that problem down the line a little bit and just send him out on loan and see if he finds it rather than do it themselves. Kian Harrott's had issues off the field. He's decent in the box. He can be decent in the box at this level, but outside the box, he just doesn't do anything really anywhere near, as much as what he should do or what you would hope he would do. But he's young and learning, so and the thing about Keane Harrit is he's really hungry and tenacious with it as well. So he's not someone who you would just kind of go, well, he's not good enough outside the box. If you tell Keane Harrit he's not good enough outside the box, he'll go and try and be good enough. He's got a good footballing attitude. Like I say, there's a few things off the pitch were not so good, but in terms of on the field, he can be tenacious and he doesn't give up. We're trying to sign Alfie May from Charlton. There's you lot have come in last minute to try and do that, which isn't welcome, Gab. Isn't welcome. But I mean, Alfie May makes a lot of sense. Worked with Michael Duff before. They've got a really good relationship. His wife, I think, is from Yorkshire as well, so that fits from a settling point.
Those two factors could really swing it your way. I mean, I imagine we might be able to offer a very competitive salary, but if you go on, sorry,
I don't think it's competitive, Gab. I think it's it's a lot of money.
Yeah, it's a lot.
I mean, you guys have got a lot of money. I mean, our owner's worth 4 billion, but he's not going to go and offer Alfie May 20 grand a week in League One, for example. Not that Birmingham are going to do that either. But you get my point. But I think Alfie May off the shoulder and Reece Healy dropping off makes sense in a lot of ways. But you kind of look at that then and you think, well, if they can't get behind, how are they going to go over? And that's where you look at Radulovic and you think Radulivic's maybe a little bit in need of strength, whereby you've got Alfie May who can score goals, you've got Reece Healy who can score goals, but only certain types of goals. Whereas if the low block comes in again, how do you go? If someone's low blocking, you need to go over the top of them sometimes, and you need like a Sam Cosgrove, if you like, at Barnsley, that type, who can then really cause an issue in the box. And we've got Hudlin and Simpson, but they're not really ready, I don't think, for that pressure that have to there, because it's not the Championship where they're developing and we're happy to be 18th or whatever. This is League One, and we need to be at least in the top 6, in terms of what the owners want. And throwing Kyle Hudlin on to see if he does it doesn't really cut it. You have to throw someone on knowing that they can change a game. Again, we've got difficulties in terms of the blend up there. I mean, we've linked with Devante Cole before. I don't know if there's anything in that, but we've been sort of linked with a couple. But Huddersfield are really good at keeping transfer stories quiet at the minute, which is really good. But in terms of if we do get Alfie May instead of him going to Birmingham, I think him and Healy would be 2 very good strikers at this level. But we may need something a little bit different, a game changer as well, whereby we can just change the style and maybe go a bit more direct, and someone who can just offer something a little bit different. So I'm not really expecting that's finished. Hopefully that's Bojan Radulovic, but we've not seen that yet since he signed in January. We've seen a player who's got very good footwork if you allow him to, but not necessarily someone who you can launch 70-yard diagonals to, who'll bring it down on his chest and bring others in. We've not quite seen that yet, but hopefully we can do that.
I think there's a really central theme that's standing out to me from this discussion, Matt, which is that when Huddersfield have made, I think we're talking about some of these players in terms of a little bit of uncertainty as to whether they're good enough. But I think that's partly because we've been watching them in the Championship, and I think there's probably going to be players who you invested in for the Championship who didn't quite cut it in the Championship, who might end up being too good for League One if they get their act together. So I'm thinking Ben Wiles, for instance, he spent just under $1 million, I think he said. Bojan Radulovic, who you signed in January, I know did really well. I think got some really positive reviews across Europe. So if he can work on his upper body strength, then he could be a top player at this level. So I think there's a few cases where there's players. David Kasumu would be another one for me. There's players there. Even Jaheim Headley, who's come through the academy, is another one who I think is going to be a lot better in League One. I think there's we're talking about them in terms of uncertainty, but there's also a good chance that when I come to you after August, we're going to be seeing some of these players are actually.
Yeah, it's the 30th of June, isn't it? And I mean, by the 30th of August, we'll know where Huddersfield Town are going to be at the end of the season. At the minute, I think we'll be pushing top 6, but things have got to fall into place between now and then. So we'll see. But yeah, you're right. There's a lot of players who could do it, but that's the thing, they could. By the end of August, the squad will look different, and I think we'll know who can do what. And I think, by the way they've set out this window, I think a lot of ducks in a row. They're just waiting to kind of knock them down, if you like. So We'll see come the end of August what things look like, and I think we'll have a really good idea whether Huddersfield will be mid-table going down or heading towards the top six. As it stands now, we're all kind of hopeful of a top six season. I don't think we'll be top two as it's. It might take us 2 seasons potentially to go up. League One's not easy. It's no one's under any. We've been here before. It's not a walk in the park. You've got so many games. You've got first round of all the cups. The Bristol Street Motors. You need a squad. Fortunately, we can afford one. A lot of clubs can't. So we've got that luxury and that advantage over some. And I'll be honest, Birmingham will take some heat off us. Birmingham are going to be the team that people want to beat this year. They're going to be I'd say Birmingham are probably the biggest club in League One next season. So I think they'll be the ones that people will look at. Bolton, we might argue, but I think Birmingham, Bolton will probably be the ones that you look at top 2 initially. I think Bolton have got a really good structure there. I know the technical, the sporting director at Bolton know how good he is in terms of organisation and
Chris
getting things.
Markham.
Yeah, I know Chris, and I know how good he is as well. And he was at Huddersfield before, so I think Bolton will be fine and really pushing towards the top 2. And if Birmingham do land what they're expecting to land, you would obviously think Birmingham would be as well. So for us, Rotherham have got a lot of their signings in early as well. So and I think they've got a lot of excitement because Steve Evans has come back. So I think like I say, Huddersfield and Birmingham have got this thing where they've just spent 5 years losing games. And I think if you look at the worst teams in the 92 for losing football matches, Huddersfield and Birmingham are both in the worst 5 or 6, aren't they? And that's a mentality shift that has to change at both football clubs as well for them to then, and you can't always do that in one season, but you can do it with 6, 7, 8, wins in a row. If you get on a roll in League One, and that's what Huddersfield and Birmingham will be looking to do. But you've got to, with both teams, have got to shift that losing mentality and come up with something different. And both teams can do it. And I think both will have decent seasons. But it's just about who gets the players at the minute, isn't it? I guess.
We'll see. So I wanted to come to you on a technical question, actually, because let's say you don't get Alfie May. What I'm wondering about is, instead of 3-5-2, you might recruit a midfield that's good enough to sort of 3-5-2 is basically the formation if you really want to maximise the midfield. But if we're talking at where Huddersfield Town are with the squad right now, I'm actually wondering about 3-4-3 with maybe Josh Karoma and Reece Healy wide of Radulovic, because that would get the better out of somebody like Karoma, and I've seen Reece Healy cut inside from wide areas quite effectively before in his career as well. So that's what I'm wondering.
Yeah, I mean 3-4. If Salba Thomas can stay, you look at 3-4, and you'd be quite excited by that. I'd probably play Healy central, to be honest. Maybe sort of dropping off as a deep line striker.
So Thomas on the right, Karoma on the left, and then Reece Healy.
As long as he has people who can run past him. We're seeing that with England out with Harry Kane. There's no one running past him at the minute at the Euros. But as long as people can run past him, and diagonally as well. Josh Karoma can do it. He's a bit of a frustrating player, is Josh Karoma. But when he's on form, he's a really good Championship player. We just don't see that often enough. And he had a spell at Portsmouth as well in League One 2 seasons ago now, and he didn't really do particularly well at Portsmouth playing on the left-hand side. So I'm not sure. There are rumours that he's been linked with a couple of clubs. He's been linked with Millwall, I think, as Josh Karoma as well. So it potentially might not be there. But yeah, I mean, Radulovic and Healy is a bit of a big man, little man combo, isn't it? In some ways, so it could be all right. The only issue really there is that I don't think either of them get in behind anymore very particularly well because they're not sharp. But I mean, it depends who you're playing against and who the central defenders are as well. If you're playing against some of the top end ones, I mean, I don't know if Dion Sanderson does he still play for Birmingham? But
yes.
Yeah, I mean, Healy and Radulic won't get past him, for example, but they may do, someone else at a different club. But it's finding the consistency, which is key with that, because you don't want to have to rely on something different when you go to Birmingham, or sit in a shell when you go away to Birmingham, Bolton, Peterborough, and the other clubs that you would expect potentially to be up there. So, I mean, we could play different shapes and different systems. I mean, we could play a back four as well, so we could go 4-3-3 as well, and so I think we're pretty good in terms of flexibility. Okay, it just depends who's going to be here come the summer, because there is a bit of an overhaul going on at the minute. There are players available to go elsewhere, so it's just really who's going to be here. At the minute, we could do it, but like I say, come the end of August, we might not be able to. It might be completely different. But yeah, there's a lot of sorting to do at Huddersfield at the minute, which makes me wonder how we'll progress as the season goes. I imagine we might
Yeah.
get stronger as the season goes, rather than start like a train. I would imagine we might be a bit sticky at the start before we find our natural sort of form in terms of where we'll be.
Yeah, that actually, it's funny because that's kind of how Michael Duff's teams have tended to go anyway. They've not necessarily started on fire, but then they've kind of grown into the season. So we could see that. I think the big thing that stands out to me is I'm not necessarily convinced you'll have one of the best 11s, but I'm convinced that you'll have a very strong squad, depending on who you offload, because you've still got some players who, you know, wouldn't look out of place in the championship that will be on the bench. So I think I do see that could be a strength. But then at the same time, you are going to want to bring in players. So I'm thinking probably going to need you'll need a goalkeeper if Lee Nichols goes. Otherwise, you're fine in that department. I think left-footed centre back, from what you said earlier. You've obviously signed the right wing back. Going to need at least another couple midfielders. And left wing back looks good, and then possibly another striker, depending on who you can offload. So, are we looking at another 5 or 6 additions?
I think so. I mean, we didn't mention Danny Ward. Danny Ward's going to turn up. He played really well for Neil Warnock, and Carlos Corberan, but didn't play very well for others. And at 33, I think he's 33 now, Danny Ward. I'm not sure. He's had a lot of injuries as well, and it's become a reliability issue in terms of that. So in League One, you need a reliable squad. And Danny Ward, I mean, he'd be okay if he was 100% fit, but we've never really seen him 100% fit since the playoff final against Nottingham Forest. He's never really been 100%, so that's difficult. But he would be someone who's slightly different from Healy and Radulovic. But I think we need a change, some kind of change from some difference maker in terms of just something completely different to what we have. And that, like I say, it can't be Kyle Hudlin, or it could be, but it's unlikely to be Kyle Hudlin or Terry Simpson at this stage. Maybe in a couple of years, you don't know. But yeah, we just, I would say, if no one leaves, probably one. Yeah, let's theorize that Miller is going to sign from Plymouth, as was strongly linked over the weekend. Fielders, maybe one that can play as a 10, and then another striker. So as well as Alfie May, if Alfie May signs. So you're looking at maybe 4, 5, yeah, around 5, I would say. And then depends on who leaves and what leaves. But that kind of upheaval then can lead to an instability at the start of the season as well, like we say. So, and Huddersfield's first 5 or 6 away games are pretty tricky on paper. You never know what teams are going to be like at the start of the season, but on paper they look quite tricky at the minute. So it'll be interesting to see what we do.
Certainly will. So, Matt, what's the biggest reason to believe that Huddersfield Town will meet their ambitions this season?
I think we're serious. I think over the last couple of years, I don't think you could really say that Huddersfield Town have been a serious football club in the league that they're in terms of their intent. So we were just quite happy to sort of float along and survive in the Championship and just keep our heads above water, and that caught up with us. I think at the minute there's been a wake up call, and I think there's an intent from the owner through to the management, all through the management, that they're all sort of aligned in terms of taking Huddersfield Town back up as soon as possible. Whether that'll be in season 1, I don't know. Season 2, 3, 4, I don't know. But the intent is there. The money is hopefully still going to be there. And we've got a lot of things going for us. There's a lot of money going into the training ground and the stadium to improve things. So we should be one of the more attractive clubs to go to for players in League One. I'm not saying the most attractive, because there are some good clubs in there, but they're a good attractive proposition for players and there's a lot of intent in making that plan work as well. So I think that'll be why Huddersfield will be a decent bet for a top 6 place.
What's your biggest reason for doubt?
There's a lot to do. I mean, the worst thing that could happen is Lee Nichols goes, Brodie Spencer goes, Sorba Thomas goes, and 4 or 5 players, and they all go at the end of the window. And that's when that becomes difficult to then replace them effectively, and that might lead us to muddle through until January. And then once that, like we did last year, and if we muddle through to January, then forget about us for the rest of it. It'll be a classed as a building season, and then we'll need to go again in the next summer. So it's the overhaul and how quickly we can do that, and it's not really been very quick so far with just one signing as of the 30th of June and one out. So yeah, there's a lot there, but I think, like I say, the intent's good, but we'll have a really clear idea come the end of August as to how Huddersfield are going to do this coming season. It's just a little bit early at the minute just to say, and there are some good teams in League One next year, some really good teams, some interesting teams. And there are some teams with a bone to pick with us as well, which is always fun. So from playoff days, fans were still upset about 2004, but never mind. Yeah, it's been it's going to be fun, I think, for Huddersfield next year. Whether they do well or not, I think it's going to be interesting, and I think it'll be a bit more fun than what it was in the Championship.
Certainly will. So, like you say, too early for a prediction, but give me a number between 1 and 10 to denote your level of optimism that the ambitions are going to be realised.
I give it a sort of a 7.5 maybe at the minute. I think the noises I hear are quite positive, and everybody's quite determined at the club, and I think that's a good thing. And I think they're not. Some clubs are a bit like a dog in a park, aren't they? With all the different smells all over the place. Not quite sure where to go and what to do. They're a little bit. Whereas we seem to be a bit laser focused, and in terms of what we want to do. So I think that's a good enough reason to go 7.5 on that.
Perfect. Matt, thanks so much for your insight. Love your stuff on the Takes That Chance podcast. This will be uploaded to YouTube, Joel, just referring to your comment there. So that will be uploaded very soon. Thanks to you for watching at home. This has been the EFL Debate Summer Deep Dive on Huddersfield Town. Get subscribed, drop in your comments as well. Let me know how you think Huddersfield are going to get on, and we'll see you again very soon.